Hello again. Now we are going to be getting into extending the basic Rails demo with actual pages, actual routes, and an actual view. So again, just to refresh from last time, Rails uses Ruby as its programming language. It also implements the MVC architecture so that we have a nice clean separation of concerns in our in our application. Now, this thing that you see here on the screen is basically the tutorial that I'm going to be following along with here, and it's the one that will get you up and running as well. And your goal is basically going to be to extend this significantly. And it's going to be between this one and the Getting Started guide from the Ruby on Rails team. So I'm going to scoot this over here, and I'm not covering anything up with my face, just making sure, because I have done that by accident. Let's go ahead. So this is a server environment that you see here on the screen. This is my SSH session for Compute Engine. Again, I created a beefier instance that I'm shutting off every time that I'm done with it. Take a moment to recaffeinate because that's required today. And let's go ahead and get started. So I am starting from scratch here. I don't have that blog folder. I'm going to create a separate one just to, additionally show you that you can create multiple environments as well. So let's say Rails new, and let's say MVC test. All right, so just like before we did Rails new blog, now we're doing Rails new whatever we're calling our project. It's going to go ahead and bundle everything together and get up and running, and we have a folder structure. So ls MVC test, we see our gem files, which are going to be, again, our modules. We have our app directory, our config directory, everything else in between that we're going to need. If I were to go into this folder, I'm just going to hit up a few times. Actually, let me clear this. Hit up a few times so you can hopefully see this a little bit better. I'm going to run Rails in a server capacity, set our host to 0000, and run on port 8080. Right? So again, I have now a server. I could run multiple at the same time, by the way, too. I could run a server on 8080, run 8081, 8082, and they'd all be different Rails applications. But let's go ahead and get a new window here. Pop over to our 500. This is what happens when you become a professor or faculty or something like that. You get 500 browser windows open. You can never find anything. All right, let's go back to our compute engine, look up the IP address, because I closed it. All right, here we go. Here's our external IP. Close you. Why did I do that? Needed that window open. Oh boy, it certainly is a day today. Over here, 8080, and here's our beautiful blog application, right? So I'm going to go ahead and close this for now because I don't need it running right while I'm developing. And actually, let me do one other thing. I'm going to run Tmux, so this is just so that I can split my session window. You could just as easily not do this, but this is going to make my life easier. So I'm running Tmux. I'm going to split it in half, Control B, and then parentheses. I'm going to leave this one over here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to leave this one running. So I'm leaving my web server running over here. And I'm going to do all my development in this window. Okay, so server is up and running. Life is good. Let's go ahead and move on now. So we created our blog. We have it running. First thing we're going to do is generate some pages. So we're going to generate a controller, and it's going to route us from point to point. And our goal here is to get rid of this default page and actually have a MVC application that's not Hello Rails, basically. So, yeah, my terminal here. I've got my list of commands I have to run over here. I am in the directory that I need to be. Let's say Rails generate controller pages. This is going to set up the Ruby files that I need to have a controller. Okay, now I see here that I have app controllers pages controller.rb, and this is the thing that we are going to edit first. So let's go ahead and edit it. I'm going to use Vim. Feel free to use Nano or, connect through the Cloud Shell and use the text editor that way. But Vim app controllers pages controller. Right, and how awful is the text here? Bear with me a second. That's not any better. I guess we're doing light mode. I was hoping for like a solarized, so it was kind of a happy medium. All right, so this is going to look a touch different than the tutorial. It's going to say that it's empty when in fact it actually gives us the basics of a class. So we see that it's called pages controller, inheriting from application controller, and we want to give it a route. So the route we're giving it is home. So our home page. If you were coming from the last video, we did some class writing in Ruby. This is exactly the same syntax. So I'm creating a function here, and I'm going to say puts hello CIS658 browsed home, and I'm just putting this in for comedic effect basically. So I have a output that's going to happen here. So we have a controller. Now we need to go ahead and add in a view. So I'm going to save and close that, and I'm going to create a file in apps view app views pages. So vim app views pages, and I'm going to call this, what do we call it? home.html.erb. So this is basically saying for the home path, create a file or create basically a web template that is going to be rendered when somebody browses home. Okay, and the ERB extension means that it's going to be processed by Ruby. So it's going to be basically manually generated. And all we're going to put in here is just h1 hello world exclamation point. All right, and we can also go a touch further. Let's add an image just for fun, and let's say, what are we in the mood for? I'm not feeling very memey today. So let's say, let's do something from Grand Haven. There we go. Completely relevant to the demo. Is this going to work? This doesn't look like it's going to work. Okay, maybe it'll work. This doesn't look like a image link, but we'll see. All right, so I've got my image, hello world. I'm going to go ahead and close this. So we've created a controller. We have created a template. Now we need to basically tell our controller what the route is to get to that home page. So what we're going to do next is we are going to open up config/routes. So app and app up here, again, we're defining basically things to put in. So the controller is saying, okay, this is my home page that I'm going to be routing. The home.html.erb is the template that we'll be filling in whenever somebody goes there, and routes is going to be the glue between them. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this. We see some default text. We see some comments in here, and I'm going to skip the commenting. I'm just going to leave it here, but I want to say route to pages pound home. So what this is saying here is that if we are at the root, go to the pages controller in whatever that home template is. So if I had like other routes, if I wanted to go to my IP address and then /blog, I would have a similar context in here, except instead of root, I would have blog. And that's something that we'll be getting to in a little bit as well. So routing, and now what we should see, if we refresh, look at that. We have a hello world page. Now this is created via templating and via MVC. And hopefully you can appreciate here that the goal is that I'm just creating templates. And I'm saying if you go to this URL, this is the page you see. Now the equivalent is I put an index.html in my root of my web directory and I see this, right? This is much more extensible than that. I can start interjecting variables, I can interject database entries, and it's very nice and easy to update. I only have a few calls to make to kind of glue it together. Again, the goal here is decoupling everything in our application. Yes, there is a bit more of a learning curve. Yes, there's more overhead, but the end result for a larger project is absolutely worthwhile. Again, you're probably going to be working on a lot of this separately, and you're going to wonder why you're going through the effort. Think about working on a larger team where you have people who have no idea how to code, but they can make web pages. They're going to live inside of this, the templates directory where we have that home.html.erb. Okay, they're going to update things, and it's not going to touch any of your database code, or vice versa. All right, last thing we're going to do here is interject some variables. And the one thing that I forgot to mention is that in our server, here's that line of code that we had from our initial controller, basically logging that this thing happened. So let's go ahead and update our controller now. So here we have our statement here that matches our statement here. Let's go ahead and remove this because, we don't care. This will be logged elsewhere anyway. Let's set a variable saying greeting, and I'm just going to follow the guide as well. Hello, CIS658. Hope you're having a swell day. So this is basically setting a variable that I can pass around to any of my templates. Again, you can replace this with calls to databases, filling with some kind of information that you pull from elsewhere. Basically, this is kind of our Ruby application here. All right, so I'm going to save this and close that. Now let's edit our template. And here is the hello world. Here's my link to Grand Haven. Let's go ahead and add in our greeting. So it's a paragraph, close paragraph, and the syntax is angle bracket % equals at the variable, and then close this off. If you have any experience with Jinja templates or other templating languages, this should look very familiar. Basically, we're just interjecting a variable into our page. And if you've ever used Python web servers, you've used Flask, again, this is that syntax as well. So I'm going to go ahead and save and close, refresh again, and look at that. There's our paragraph tag down here. I didn't have to restart my web server. It's all just up and running. Okay, good job. Not too bad. Again, this is going to be the basis of MVC. In your assignment, you'll do a little bit more to kind of get a feel for what's possible, but hope you have fun. It's an interesting framework and honestly can do a lot of really nifty things. Okay, bye everybody.